Thank you for coming out. I just want to go over a little bit about what this presentation really is about. This isn't a remedial course in how to use social media. I am not an expert in all things social media. This is really about strategically planning how to use social media to promote and further your career as a photographer. Whether it be from a blogging perspective, from a professional photography perspective, this is really about the kind of tool that social media has provided for us as photographers and how we should be trying to utilize it, and what my experiences have been in making a following that it is an interesting kind of story behind it. I have a tremendous amount of exposure, but the unusual part about that is while millions of people have seen my photos week in and week out in the New York Times, the New York Times is not a social media driven entity, which means that my social media following is significantly smaller than other photographers who are in a more web-based environment. So it's a strange world, and that my social media following has been very grassroots and organic in a way, because I've been involved in social media as a blogger, in Twitter and Instagram for many, many years. And now I'm starting to see kind of critical mass and a building of my following. And I undertake systematic experiments in social media as well as a photographer, and I'm going to share those with you at the end of the presentation and what I learned from them. But in the meanwhile, we're going to go through this, and like I said, we'll hold on to questions, particularly anything that's kind of specific about using social media. We're going to wait on that until the end. But I'm happy to help you any way I can with the experience I have in that area. But what we're going to concentrate on here is more of a strategic approach to using social media to benefit your career, your interests in photography. So here we go. So here's our, if you are going to participate in social media during the event today, this is the hashtags and the call-outs that we'd like you to use, so that we can see what you're posting and sharing it and like it and be part of it. So that's the community that we're part of today. So that's what I'd ask you to get involved with. The first thing we need to understand about social media is it is psychological. It is deeply psychological. If you start to question yourself first in what you expect from social media, what you gain from social media, you start to understand how to build a following. What do likes mean to you? What do followers mean to you? What Deborah said when she was standing up here. How do I lose 3 and gain 5? And if you're following and channeling all of that kind of emotion and intellect into the idea of what is it that's happening here, you can understand better how you can build a following if you understand yourself, because you are just one of millions who feel exactly the same way about social media. If it wasn't that way, it wouldn't have grown to this point. It is deeply and utterly psychological, and you have to be honest with yourself about what you expect and use that information to play into how you can build a following and how you can utilize it to grow a career or your interest or your hobby or whatever it might be. There are a lot of benefits to using social media, and we'll go over many of them as we talk. You need to compartmentalize and cultivate your social media. And basically, this is the breakdown of the ones I use and how I use them. For business, as a photographer, I utilize Instagram mostly, Twitter secondarily, and LinkedIn basically just as a way for people to find me. I don't really participate in LinkedIn the way I do in the others, but it's there, I'm present on it, and it's a tool. I want to talk about Instagram first, but we're going to go back to the others here. Family, pleasure, politics, that's Facebook, because I can control who follows me on Facebook. It's not a professional endeavor for me. Yes, my photos jump over, my links, the things that I'm participating in and doing, but I utilize that for the part of me that wants to participate in social media community that has nothing to do with me being a photographer. I am coincidentally a photographer on Facebook. I am primarily a photographer on Instagram. That's what I mean by compartmentalizing. Because if you start to try to use every social media platform the same way, you run the risk of doing things that are going to be detrimental to yourself as a photographer. So you need to kind of focus in on the things that are the most beneficial for you and leave the other stuff aside. Meaning, so like, my family is off limits on Instagram. I don't post pictures of my family. I don't post pictures of where I am, what I'm doing, if it's not work related. It is my portfolio and an announcement to my following and the people who look at my Instagram what I am doing as a professional. And when you look at people's Instagram layout, right? The what do you call it? The profile page. But not just the profile page, but what's below the profile page to see the consistency of their work. I only need to go to that page to flip through to see if somebody's very serious about their photography and how they're portraying it on social media. It's very important to be that, and I'm going to go back to that as well. But also things like politics. Politics are polarizing, and I'm going to speak a little bit more about it later. But if you try to interject all of your thoughts and your feelings on social media, especially on a platform that you're trying to promote yourself as a professional, you're going to divide your audience. Those are the things that are better kept compartmentalized. I'm not saying you shouldn't share your thoughts on your feelings about anything in the world, but don't cross-pollinate it with your work. Because when you go to work and you start talking about politics, immediately, especially if you have to deal with groups of people, very diverse groups of people, you're already fragmenting your audience. Because you know it as well as I do. You're going down your Facebook page and somebody says something really politically offensive to you. What do? Unfollow, see ya, gone. That's what we do. So if that's what you know happens and that's what you know your experience is, then you know that professionally you need to separate. And then planning tools. Pinterest. Pinterest is a fantastic planning tool for art directors, creative directors, photographers, people who have to collaborate with other artists, because we use Pinterest, in particular with a couple of magazines that I work for mood boards. So I'm doing a story next week on a particular dish that's served in a particular place in China. And I have to do 5 recipes that are reflective of this particular place. And they have a series of photos from the region of the dish, served in the bowls and the dishes and the spoons and everything in the way it's presented in this place. The art director puts all those pictures on Pinterest. I look at it. I devise a plan with the stylist on how I want to lay those things out, how I want to source the bowls and the plates and the surfaces and the colors and the lighting, all of it. That's what Pinterest is for me. It's a fantastic tool. I think on some level, I don't use Tumblr, but I know that some people also use Tumblr for a lot of inspiration, and they pull a lot of because Tumblr, from my estimation, is about posting and reposting and gathering and collecting. All of these things are great planning tools when you're dealing with a photo shoot. So if you're a travel photographer and you want to get a sense of what the place is like that you're going to, or you want to take pictures of, or the feel that you're going to want, you can create and look at other pictures that people have done on Pinterest or Tumblr and put together a mood board for yourself. Or if you're working with an art director who has a very specific vision, and you say that I need some visual references, or in the business we call them comps. Can you give me some comps, some comparables, things that I know are going to make my work easier in directing this particular photo shoot or this particular commercial or whatever I'm working on? That's where Pinterest comes in, and it's clearly invaluable to me at this point. It has never been easier to work with an art director who's really adept at doing that. And I will encourage you, if you're in those situations, collaborating with other people on whatever level it is, even if you're just doing a personal project with other people, using that for inspiration, using that for collaboration, it's fantastic. Social media is great for what? It's great for networking. So you're building communities and participating in communities with people who are of multiple interests to you. People who you like and want to work with, people who you want to see your work, people who have like interests and on similar creative trajectories, or even business trajectory. So like when I got a lot of my start in social media in the blogging world. So I was going and speaking at blogging workshops. And that's where I made a lot of connections. In my life, I had one particular connection that was made on social media that brought me here right now. I wouldn't be teaching courses, I wouldn't be instructing people, running workshops, any of that, if it wasn't for one person who became a friend of mine on Twitter, who invited me to Seattle to teach a workshop in her home. That was 5 years ago. I have not stopped working since, because the connections in the network that I made in that city, which was one of the biggest food blogging cities in the country at that time, everything exploded out of Seattle and everything from that point on. So the lesson being, a simple connection you make on a friendly level with somebody in social media can turn and snowball into things, because you network and you work well with others, into things that are much more valuable to you. Not just professionally valuable, but personally valuable. I shot a book last week with a woman from Seattle that I met at that workshop many years ago. She got a book contract 5 years later. She wasn't even thinking of a book contract back then, but she thought of me because she met me there. She liked me. She liked my work. We became friendly through social media, and now we shot a book together. And it's something she's very proud of, because she's been working at this for her whole life to get to this point. So there's a great amount of pride. Inspiration. I use social media for a lot of inspiration, particularly the reason I put this one up, and I'll show you another one later, is that being able to pull so much visual stimulus on social media, particularly on Instagram, is so valuable to me, because I'm not just inspired by food photography. That's what I do for a living. But I am a creative person who doesn't view myself as a food photographer. I view myself as an artist who happens to make my work in food. And architecture, painting, other photography, light, just looking at the way other photographers use light, it all is a constant source of information, and it's a constant source of inspiration for me to draw from and learn from and look at and say, how can I make this something in my world mean something? How can I make the inspiration I pull from all different arenas? So if you're into food photography and you're only following food photographers, you're missing the boat. Follow anybody who catches your eye. Flip through that and build an entire portfolio of things that you find interesting, exciting, beautiful, whatever it might be, because as an artist, and particularly as a visual artist and a photographer, you have this enormous tool at your disposal to constantly feed your mind with great, great things to build from. And that leads into creativity. I am, again, a food photographer. It's what I make the majority of my living doing. But I use Instagram sometimes, or other social media platforms, to express myself as an artist in another way. So right now I use Twitter that way, because I like to keep my Instagram, like I said, compartmentalized. But I do want to share other photographs that I take or other art projects that I'm working on social media. So I may post it on Twitter or Facebook, because I want to continue to push creative work, creative imagery, creative thought into what is essentially the marketplace. Because somebody may look at that outside of what I normally do and have a second thought and go, wow, he's a lot more than just that. He's got a lot of creative ideas. But it's also an outlet. Because when you work in the art field and you happen to be pigeonholed into one particular area, yet you have a lot of creative energy, you want to spread that out, and you want to find other things that you find interesting. I find street art really interesting. And I always have. And I find inspiration in the color palettes and the textures that I see. And I want to use that to my advantage. So I've built different social media kind of projects around that. And it makes for something that's an outlet for me, like a hobby almost. Earning money. And this is not to be taken lightly anymore. If you build a significant social media following, the advertisers will come. And for somebody who has a social media following in the, let's say, 10 to 50,000 follower range, you can probably command $2,000 to $3,000 an image from an advertiser who wants to post on your site or wants you to do a takeover of their site. So there is a lot of money in the marketplace, and this is going to be changing too, because now Instagram has changed their rules, and which will be shifting systematically over the next couple of years, where they are allowing advertisers to post directly to everyone's feed. We're not very happy about this, but it is a reality of social media that they need to make money. They've offered it for free for a very long time. I don't know if they're going to give you an opportunity to opt out of it. Maybe they will. It would be nice if they did. But the marketplace is moving here because advertisers know one thing, and that's very true at this point. Their market is 16 to 25-year-olds with parents with money. It's who buys everything in their estimation. If you look at advertising now as opposed to what it was like 30 years ago, they didn't market to children then. Now they do. They market heavily to children, and they know they're all here on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and they are marketing heavily there. So if you build a following, you can make a living out of it. I know several people who basically that's all they do. They do videos and they do photography for major advertisers on social media, and they make very good livings. And that is something you can do in a grassroots way. You can build up a following, and as the following, especially if it's focused in one particular area, you can build a following that will attract advertisers. And you can also raise awareness for your brand. So if you are a professional, or you are a writer, or you are doing anything out there in the world that you want people to see, you need to hone down and find your brand, what it is that you're selling to everyone else. Whether that's ideas, whether it's actual product, whether it's something intellectually based like photography, you need to understand that that is your alter ego on the internet. So you can create something very different than what you are in real life. I feel like my particular brand on the internet is very separate from who I am as a person. And that's the important part of that compartmentalization, is formulating something that is separate from who you are as a human being, but retains enough of your humanity to share with other people, but keeping some privacy. Privacy is a very, very hard thing to keep in this world. And I'm hoping that understanding the idea of compartmentalizing what you want to share and what you may want to keep to yourself, it's important. It's more important for you if you're thinking about this as a marketing technique. If you're looking at Instagram or Facebook or any of these things as a marketing technique to push your wares out into the world, whatever they may be, then you need to start to separate yourself from what you are doing professionally. And that's a very important part of it. Follows, reposts, and tagging. Okay. I said this earlier. You want to follow other people for inspiration, for connectivity, networking, all these things. Don't pity follow. You know what pity following is? Pity following is following people that don't pull any inspiration into your world, but you follow them because you feel badly if you didn't follow them that they wouldn't like you anymore, okay? That's for Facebook. If you're going to be doing this professionally, fill your mind and fill your eyes with things that inspire you and not feel obligated to follow back. If somebody follows you, great. If you feel like you want to follow them back, feel empowered to do it. Don't feel like you have to give it up because they gave it to you. That's just, it is the social aspect of it, it's the psychological aspect of it, but it is not helping you define yourself and define your inspiration. It's watering it down. When you're flipping through Instagram, when you have 5 minutes of time to kind of fill your mind with something beautiful or something inspirational, and you're constantly flipping through the same picture of somebody's cat, you're gonna start to lose patience with that. And you want to use it as a tool to fill yourself. Your friends can follow you on Facebook. If you're a photographer, your feed should be streamlined for things that are going to fill your mind with what you want to see. That's what it is. It's a visual medium. You want to be strategic about your follows, about your reposts, and about your tagging, because if you can form relationships with people who have bigger followings than you, get them to follow you, look at your work, you follow them, you repost their work, Maybe you tag them to make sure they look at stuff. I mean, sometimes it's a little overwhelming. I mean, I get 4 or 5 a day where it's one of these pictures that has like 90 tags on it, and it's tagged like every food photographer in America is tagged on this one photo because somebody wants it to be seen. It's a little obnoxious. You try not to be obnoxious in social media as well. It's a big help not to be obnoxious. But if you can be strategic about how you follow and how you are crafting and shaping your social media following, who you follow and who follows you back, that's again, it's an important concept to understand. The social part of social media is sometimes you have to kind of distance yourself from that, and you could call it almost like business media, in that you're starting to think like a business person as a photographer in this marketplace, and how you're going to shape and craft what you want to see and what you want people to see. But the one time I make the exception with follow backs is when you're playing the psychological mind game with clients. You follow a client regardless of whether their Instagram is good, because you want them to be aware of you. That's another aspect of this, is being, if I'm want to work for a particular client and they like one of my pictures, I'll follow them for one reason and one reason only. I want my name to pop up on their screen, and that's free advertising. So understand that when there's somebody involved in your life that you want to work with, work for, or impress, that's where the psychological aspect of this helps. That's where it's not a pity follow, it's a strategic follow. It's kind of ugly business, isn't it? It is. But this is what we are faced with at this point, because this is free advertising. And if you understand it that way, yeah, it's ugly business, but it's business. And if you want to make a living in this field, it's something. I'll give you a prime example. A friend of mine, who I will not name, is one of the 5 top news photographers in the world. Clearly. He wasn't on Instagram. And I kept goading him and goading him and goading him to be on Instagram for a number of reasons, but primarily as a creative outlet for him, because he feels stagnated in news photography and has all these creative impulses. He finally puts himself out on Instagram. He gains 50,000 followers in like a week because everybody was waiting for him. Here he is, finally. He's finally here because his reputation preceded him. And he was so hesitant to do it. But now, from a marketing perspective, when he's ready to stop being a news photographer, the world sees him somewhat differently now. Because now he's thinking like a businessman. Even though maybe he's not interested in the commerce of social media. But now all of a sudden he has something very, very valuable. Very valuable at his disposal. To use as he sees fit. He doesn't need to post pictures of Monsanto if he doesn't want to. But, you know, because politically he feels uncomfortable with that. You don't have to do that. That's the other thing about this, is if you do build a social media following that has, that's my wife. Oh, sorry. That's her ring. Why is she calling? If you build a social media following that will generate income for you, guess what you are now? Your own boss. Which is another fantastic way to go about doing these things, where you're not reliant so much always on other people. You can pick and choose your clients. It's a fantastic way to live. Tagging and reposting and retweeting photos, posts, brands, whatever it is you want to be affiliated with, who you want to see your work, who you feel is important for them to know who you are. That's who you get engaged with on social media. You try your best without being a pest, you know, especially with people with really big social media followings. My social media following is modest by comparison to some of the people out there, but I can tell you that it's hard to keep up with. It's hard to keep up with all the comments, and it's hard to keep up with all the people who follow, to see who is following. It's hard, and it's not personal when I don't make a comment back or I can't respond. It's just overwhelming. And you have to keep that in mind too. If you're making commentary on people's posts, or you're liking their posts and you're expecting them to see you, you need to readjust the way you're thinking, because it's not like that. Especially the bigger the person and the entity that you're trying to get their attention, the harder it is for them to manage it and maintain what it is that they're doing. It's very hard. And the bigger people get, particularly on the celebrity end, the less likely they're doing their own social media. They have a department or a person who's handling it for them. I was working out next to Kanye West one day. This is a real story. And there was he had a girl that was just there with him in the gym taking pictures and posting them on social media. That was it. That was her job. Nice to have that kind of money. Hashtagging. Hashtagging has become somewhat of a cultural meme in a way, or a culture. It's iconic in our culture now. There are a lot of different things, and I list a bunch of ones on the bottom that give the examples of what I mean. They're for grouping photos. That was the first and primary goal for grouping ideas, to put everything in one nice, neat package so everybody can find what they're looking for. That's what hashtagging was invented for. But it started to become something about being clever, too, about putting something at the end of a tweet or at the end of a photo that got people thinking a little differently. So in this way, I love my job, right? That is something is a little bit of a personal like twist, or something like camera peeps. It's unique. It's probably not going to group with a whole lot of other things, but it's sort of like a little message. That's what hashtagging also has come about. It's also about acknowledgement. So when you want to use a hashtag in a photo and you want to acknowledge other people in the photo, or you want to acknowledge an idea or a concept that's part of the photo, that's one of the good things about hashtagging, is that you can group things that way and offer acknowledgement as well. And also particularly with people who are not necessarily on social media. So like I worked with a couple of people today earlier, and one of them isn't on social media, so the only way to tag her would be to put her name in a hashtag, so if anybody was looking for her, they'd still find her picture, even though she might not find it. For community as well, the idea of grouping photos or ideas or whatever is also about building community. And a big part of the big part of social media is the idea that you can connect with people remotely, people you don't know, people that you admire, people that you want to get to know, people who you like their work. It's very special in that way. So you need to do the hashtagging as part of that. It's just part of the package. And it's also for following and participating in trends. When you look at Twitter, or you look at what's trending in any given social media platform, you sort of pull yourself into the idea of what's current. And where can you interject yourself into that as an artist? If there's something really important going on, or something very cultural happening, and you want to do a photo that's concurrent with that, you can hashtag it, put it into the general public that way, and that way if your photo gets noticed or gets part of that kind of consciousness, you're starting to build your following. You're building the idea that there is something other that you can participate in to grow that following. Okay, this is a visual medium, and I'm going to say don't be a purist, right? What does that mean to me? Don't be a purist is, everybody who's a purist thinks this is the only way you can put a photo on Instagram, okay? You are a photographer, and if you are a professional photographer, as I am, as a couple other people in this room are, you got no business posting that many pictures with this thing, because you have all these other tools at your disposal. And you need to process your pictures. You need to crop your pictures. You need to give credit in those pictures for the people who are appearing in them. You need to adhere to the ideas and the practices of professional photography, even if it's on social media. You need to understand that. You need to give credit. You need to edit, enhance your photos when appropriate, any way you like, caption correctly, spell everything correctly, put the names of the places there correctly, the name of the people there correctly. These are the primary tools for photographers. If you don't caption your photographs well, people don't take you seriously in our world. So if you don't understand that, or no one has ever told you that, I'm telling you now, if an editor is looking at your Instagram feed and they're flipping through and they notice that you caption your photos well, everybody gets credit, you list the people who are in it, whatever it might be, they're going to see that you understand the rules. And now all of a sudden you're elevated one step further. They like your visuals and they know you're a professional. You can project professionalism on social media very easily. Edit your work. Don't overshare, don't overpost. Because when I'm looking through an Instagram feed and I see 6 pictures of the same thing, that doesn't ring true to me as somebody who's taking their visuals very seriously. Editing is the essential tool for putting your work out into the market, into the world. If you're not really, really careful about how you're marketing yourself and how you're editing your work, I edit my Instagram feed still. I go back and look through it, and I'm like, that picture does not fit in this flow. Boom, out. You have to constantly be editing. It's an important thing to remember because you can get excited about a picture and then all of a sudden you're throwing it up on social media and you didn't crop it and you didn't edit it and you didn't enhance it and you didn't do any of that stuff and it doesn't have a great caption and it's just kind of out there because you felt really good about it at the moment. That's not a great reason to put a photo on Instagram if you're a professional. It's just not. It's a portfolio. You have to look at this like a portfolio. So I use this as an example. This is my executive producer who handles me for commercial work. She started this project. And you look at her Instagram feed, and it's so amazingly consistent and focused. And she doesn't have a lot of followers. But you know what? When I look at her Instagram, I see her as a serious artist. I understand that she gets it. She totally understands the level that is of commitment it takes to one particular medium to make it consistent and good. And it's a very unique thing that she does. Basically what these photos are extreme close-ups of bill posts that are torn, graffiti, all the stuff you see is sort of the patina of New York City. And then she takes them and she crops them into squares, and then she enhances them. So basically she's taking art that has been sort of marred and then photographing it in one art form and then reimagining it with enhancement and then posting it as new art. And it's fantastic because it shows the eye, it shows the creativity, it shows the commitment. And these are the kind of things that even people who are not working artists, or, I mean, she is a working artist, but not in this field. This is her outlet. This is her creative kind of boon. This is the thing that she does to inspire herself and give purpose to the idea of a creative person. So it's a visual medium. And remember, if you're posting something that doesn't look so great, and I'll tell anybody who is posting pictures of food from restaurants at night, you have failed. There is no way you've made that picture good. Right, William? That's right. Okay. Your profile pic and your info. See, I use this one as an example. This is somebody I follow. I like her following. She's a very good food stylist and a writer. But look at her profile. She tells you where she's from. She tells you what she does. She tells you a little bit about herself, and she gives you the relevant information. And that's it. There is no quippy, snarky, whatever little weird thing. We don't need to know if she's a mom. We don't need to know if she's got pets. We don't need to know any of that as a professional. I don't need to know that because that's private. What I need to know is what you do, where you are, and how you go about your business. As a professional photographer, if I'm going to hire a stylist off of Instagram, which is completely possible, I'm looking for somebody who's serious about how they put their profile and their picture up. Put a good headshot, not a picture of your dog, not a picture of the pattern on your floor. Put your picture, your face, because that is the one thing that will introduce you to the world. People look at your face, they will know who you are. They will recognize you. When you go to a meeting with somebody you've never met before, which happens to me twice a week, they know what I look like when I walk in the room, especially if I trip over the chair and fall down, because I like to make an entrance. They know what I look like. So yesterday I had people come into my studio. I'd never met them before. I didn't meet them through social media. It was a professional visit. I had to run out and get milk. I forgot. They were coming for coffee and I didn't have milk. So I ran out to the store just as they were coming, and they saw me running back down the street with the milk under my arm, and they went, "Hey, Andrew!" Because they knew what I looked like, because I put my face on my thing. So it's a simple little thing, But keep it relevant, keep it professional, have a good headshot, and it's not a dating site, it's a portfolio, right? That's what it is. Because I think a lot of people mistake anything out there in social media as a sort of like a Match.com profile. What are your likes? What are your dislikes? I like summer beaches and traveling the world. Yeah, so does everyone else. So, keep it focused. Keep your eyes on the prize. Okay. I talked about with the follows and the reposts, and the other thing is that the likes. I'm going to tell you, you are competing with cuties, cats, and celebrities. You can't compete with any of them. You just can't. So don't even hold yourself up to that standard. Because people who post pictures like this are looking for likes, right? That's the psychological aspect of it. Let me build, how many likes, how many likes, how many likes? Likes mean nothing when it comes to how good a picture is. It's just not. It's about how to tap into people's emotional kind of thought process in this social media thing, is that I want to put things out that are familiar, I want to put things out that are cute, I want to put things out that are erotic, whatever it might be. You can't compete with it as a photographer. Unless, of course, you decide to take pictures of any of those three things and post them on Instagram. Because then you'll get lots of likes. Because they have a built-in audience. These entities have a built-in audience. Because it's really emotional and it's really part of our DNA to be into things that are sexual or sexy, things that are cute and fun, and people that are familiar. And if you understand that and not try to compete with that, then you can forget about those things. You can keep your work and your personal things aside. The other thing is what you like is also visible to everyone else, particularly on Instagram. So if you're going through liking 700 pictures of cats, and then people are interested in the way you think as an artist, and then all of a sudden everything you've liked pops up and it's a cat, and you're trying to be a portrait photographer, well, you're not that interested in people. You should maybe be a cat photographer. And there's nothing wrong with being a cat photographer. But the idea is that you got to be mindful of what you're doing and who's watching, especially if you're trying to build a following and you're trying to look at this as a portfolio for work. These community projects are fantastic, particularly on Instagram. This one is called WHP, hashtag WHP, which is Weekend Hashtag Project. That's what that means. And what these things are, that's not my picture, just so you know. What these things are is an opportunity through Instagram to participate in a community project over a weekend that might possibly help you get your work out in front of people who have never seen it before. And if you happen to get chosen, like one of these pictures that goes up on with that hashtag on it from Instagram, you got to remember that's going out to the entirety of Instagram. So analytically, if 1% of your following likes your picture, you've done pretty well. So if you think about that from this perspective, if 1% of the people who see this picture with the weekend hashtag project thing follow you, you're talking about changing your complete profile. So getting involved in these things, it's also creative and it's also great to be involved in the community, but it's a great way if you hit the Instagram lottery, right? And that's what it is the Instagram lottery. If you hit the Instagram lottery because you participate in it every week, not only are you developing yourself as a creative and you're learning how to take art direction, which is an essential skill, this is a perfect example. So when I teach a workshop, I give art direction. I say, this is the assignment, this is what I want it to look like, and this is how I want it to feel. Make pictures. And then everybody has to figure out what it is that I want as an art director. That's what this is. And it's community-based, so you can get feedback. So you can put stuff out there, and some people will make commentary and criticism, and if you can kind of learn from that. There's also great groups on like Facebook. Any type of photography that you're interested in, there are groups on Facebook that you can join. and participate in these type of community projects where you're putting out work, you're taking critiques. Sometimes there's people like myself who participate in them that help and judge contests or make critique of a particular group of photos. And people really learn from it. They really gain a lot. And you don't need to sit in classrooms. Of course, I would love you to sit in classrooms, but you don't need to continue to learn and grow as an artist, particularly as a photographer, because there's so much photography out there for us. My personal projects have been things like this. This is street art, and I photographed something like in the neighborhood of like 300 Post No Bill signs, and they're unbelievably different everywhere I go. And it's unique to New York in a way too, because it's not something you see in a lot of cities. And the reason it's a New York thing is because we had a thriving Broadway community here where the bills would go up on all the things, so eventually construction projects or whatever got tired of it and started posting Post No Bills. But I have found all sorts of creative twists on Post No Bills, including the other day near Astor Place, a guy playing a piano that was decorated with Post No Bill signs. And it was performance art, where the piano was there for anybody to sit down and play. But it was labeled with Post No Bill stuff, so it was cool. The other one is I called a whole project Headshots, where I took pictures of my head in lots of different places. So it's a play on words, it's a play on, you know, what you put over your head. You know, there's a lot of different things you could do, and it was something creative. It keeps me thinking, it keeps me working, and it also lets me be in front of the camera a little bit, because I'm not really comfortable posting selfies of myself, and don't even get me started on selfies. We'll have a little discussion about selfies before we're done today. But I'll drink some water after that, because I'm getting heated. Okay, but have your own personal projects. Have them on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you think they're appropriate if they're in your vein. But I also want to talk a little bit about the idea of focus when it comes to being a photographer. So when I do portfolio review for people, which essentially is what this is now, right? You look at people's Instagram feed, it's like portfolio review. So when I do a portfolio review for people, I look through front to back, and I go back to the beginning, and I look through again. I find the 5 best images in the whole thing. Usually they're in the same vein, because some people usually do one thing really well and a bunch of stuff okay. And when you're a young photographer and you're not quite sure where your focus is yet, you got landscape, you got portrait, you got food, you got pretty much everything in your portfolio. You got some newsy stuff, you got some arty stuff. And when I'm looking at a portfolio like that, I say, well, this photographer's not there yet because they don't know who they are. It's not about the skill level. It's about the focus. Because you could be a really decent photographer in a lot of different areas, but you need to know what you do better than most people. And that's usually just one thing. For me, it was food. I'm not a bad photographer in other arenas, but I have something special for food. And I recognized that, and as soon as I started shooting food, that was all I did after that. And I've developed into a better photographer on other fronts, but I'm still primarily, my photographic gift that I was given was to take pictures of food. So once you've identified what your gift is, what the thing that you see the best or see differently or uniquely, that's where you can put them into things like personal projects and really hone down on what it is that you want to be as a photographer. Because you can't be everything to everybody. It's impossible. And editors don't accept it. They don't look at portfolios like that and say, I want to hire this person. They look at portfolios that are concise. They want to know what you do well, and they want to see you do it over and over and over and over and over again. And that's repetitiveness is what it is in editorial and advertising photography. You have to do one thing very well. So consistency. And this is, I've been saying this throughout. So this guy is a art director at the New York Times, and he is immensely talented on a number of levels. But his Instagram feed is all about fashion because he's just got something great about the way he sees it. He's got an incredible collection of clothing and watches and all these other things. He's a collector of all different things. But he focuses on this particular look across the board. His Instagram feed is consistent, and it's entertaining, and it's interesting. And when you look at it from in a broad stroke, you could see that the guy has a vision. You can understand. It may not be your vision. It may not be something that appeals to you. But the idea is that you could see that he means business. This is it. This is what I do. This is what I want to share. And it's interesting. And he's a funny guy, and he's quirky and weird, but his Instagram feed is terrific. It's only like a couple of months old. And he's building followers. And ultimately, because of his connections with the paper, he'll get noticed as somebody who really has an eye for fashion. And if he wants to do that eventually, either as a writer or a blogger or whatever it might be, people are going to come to him because they understand that he knows fashion. So there's no money like money in fashion in photography. There's no money like money in fashion. Because if you become an advertising fashion photographer, just go to Malibu and buy a house because you will be able to afford it eventually. There's an incredible amount of money in that arena. So he doesn't see himself as a photographer, but he sees himself as a conduit, right? A conduit to some other venue, media venue, to talk about and share and show his understanding of fashion, men's fashion in particular. And the fact that he's a middle-aged guy, there's a whole nother market there because fashionable middle-aged men, there you go, boom, he's pinholed it, and he's great at it. Don't watermark your photos, please, please, please don't watermark your photos. Nothing screams amateur like I'm watermarking my photos. Because look through National Geographic, right? Maybe the most iconic photography entity in the country. Time Magazine, the New York Times. Well, I take that back. The New York Times is ill-advised in watermarking their photos on Twitter, but then they don't do it on Instagram. But I'm not going to get into it. The idea is some of the most famous photographers in the world, some of the most famous photography entities in the world are not watermarking their photos. No one is stealing your 72 DPI photo off of Instagram. I love that everybody laughed at that. They all the photo geeks. Just don't do it. It looks really unprofessional. It screams, I want attention. And don't distract from your image. You make a great image. Don't put your name across it. Your name is on your account. People know it's yours. If somebody ends up stealing it and using it, consider yourself like the rest of us. We've all had our pictures taken and used in inappropriate ways. It's just part of the landscape. But don't mar your images with watermarks, particularly when you work hard to make them. You work hard to take the picture, you work hard to process the picture, you give it a lot of thought, and then you go splash some nonsense across it. Just don't do it. That's my rant for today. Okay. Common etiquette says not to talk about politics, sex, religion, or money, right? Don't do it on your professional Instagram account or whatever it is that you're looking to promote because, like I said earlier, you are going to fracture your audience. Your politics are your politics. Put them in places where only people you know are going to look at that. All of the things that are taboo topics are detrimental to your progression in building an audience. You want to be neutral in the marketplace. You don't want to share all of those thoughts with everybody. Now, if you want to be a pundit and do it well. Get on your soapbox and crow as loud as you can because you'll build an audience doing that. But not in photography. Because in photography, it's about broadening the audience, not narrowing it down. Photography has a tendency to be political, and it can be very political depending on who took the picture and where, and how it's published and where. But the idea is, as you're starting out, you need to understand that the more you talk about things that people might find uncomfortable, controversial, distasteful, whatever it might be, you're breaking down your audience into little pockets now. And they're not thinking about you as an artist anymore. They're thinking about you as a person with politics or a person who has, wants to put their sexuality first or whatever it might be. There's a place for that. It's just not in the realm of what you want to be as a photographer on social media. I don't discourage you from it. I just discourage you from mixing it with your business. Don't be a troll and don't feed a troll. Does everybody here know what a troll is? Okay, I'm going to explain a troll because not everybody said yes. Trolling is when people who are trying to get your attention on the internet say negative things about you or say negative things to you in a hope to get your attention. So basically what happens is someone says something nasty about your picture and you have the tendency that you want to reach out and choke them, right? You're angry. They've gotten you emotional. Well, then the troll has won. Trolling is, the joke is it's the people who live in their mother's basement who don't get out very much, And you have to think of it that way. And the more high profile you become, the more trolls you will acquire. And I put this next to the last thing about taboo topics. The more controversial you are, the more trolls you will get. And ultimately, whether you respond to them or not, if you're cultivating trolls because you are being political or being whatever, polarizing, then that stuff is going to be things that you have to monitor and manage, and you don't want to have to do it. I guess I don't have to tell you not to be a troll because it's about being nice. If you want to do well on social media, you get a lot more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. It's not helpful, and I think it's common sense. But what the common sense to be nice people get, the common sense not to lash out and go back at people when they lash out at you is something you need to be reminded of. And it's hard to do, but you have to discipline yourself. And every time I talk to somebody, particularly somebody with a big social media following who just had an incident with a troll, we laugh and joke and call them an amateur. Because the more skilled you are at building a following in social media, the better you are at dealing with the negativity. And the more successful you become, the more negativity you will encounter. Because people are jealous, and they need to deal with it. And you need to ignore them, and you'll feel better for it. And your following will grow because of it. Because if you're not cultivating those types of people, then you're obviously doing something in a positive way. Building versus buying a following. It's out there, and people are doing it, and you can pretty much see the people who do. People who have no business having 100,000 followers on any given social media platform are buying their following. It doesn't ring true because, quite honestly, the people that you're getting from this, most of them are robots and they're not actual people. And eventually Instagram, what they did was they cleaned up all of that. If you saw your following drop considerably at one point about 6 months ago, it was because of that. But you need to understand that this is not a way to build a business. It's a cheap, cheating way to maybe project yourself to an advertiser, but advertisers know better. If they see somebody who doesn't have any other presence in media have 200,000 followers and then they look at their Instagram feed and there's really nothing there, they know that you bought your following. Your following has to be a grassroots. You have to build it from scratch, and you hope that you get mentioned as a really good Instagram feed at the end of the year, or you get mentioned in an article, or somebody reposts your photo because they like it. These are the ways that grassroots Instagram feeds and Twitter feeds, that's the way these things build, and that's where they have weight. So you can have, it's a quality versus quantity argument. I have a very, very high quality following. My 14,000 are people, real people, people who are into food, people who are into photography, and you see a lot of them interact constantly. It could be 10 times that much, and it might look really splashy, but it wouldn't be the same if I bought 100,000 followers for whatever, It's a silly thing. Okay. So this is where I want to end this part of the discussion is my experiments. So when I signed on to do this class, I decided to do a lot of research about how do you build a following on Instagram? How do you build a following on Twitter? What do you do? What can you do to be proactive about building your following, other than all the things I've already talked about? So these were my experiments. So I took, because I have a fairly substantial social media following, so a lot of information goes out. So what I did was, the first night, I sat at my computer and I hashtagged the death out of like 50 photos in my feed. So I went back into my feed and I hashtagged the heck out of everything. Food porn. I took the top 10. I researched the top 10 hashtags on the internet and I put them all in 50 photos on my feed. And you know what the results were? Zip. It did nothing. It didn't do a solid thing. And you know, when people look back at if they're seeing it, right? If people are actually seeing it, they were going to click on me. They would see that I have a significant following and that I work for the New York Times, and they're going to probably follow me back, right? It did nothing. I was so shocked that we constantly tell people to hashtag these particular things, and that's way to build a following. I'll tell you exactly my theory behind it. I hashtagged the top 10 food hashtags, and I put them in all my photos. The problem is those feeds have millions of photos in them, which means they go by so fast that nobody is spending that much time looking at any one particular photo. So if you picked up 1 or 2 followers out of that, that's because that one picture struck somebody and they followed you. But there's also, think about the psychology of the follow. Who do you follow? Why? Do you not follow somebody because they're a rival? Do you not follow you know what I mean? Think about that part of it. Do you see following somebody as an extension of who you want them to see you as? So, oh, I'm not going to follow that person because I don't want them to think I followed them, right? Think about it. These are the thoughts that go through our heads when we're doing these things, because there is this intense social element to this. So when it comes to these experiments, so then I did the liking experiment. And I went through everybody's photos on my not on my feed, but on in a hashtag, like something food related. And I went through and I liked all these people's pictures that I don't normally follow. So I figured, okay, I'm a guy in the food world. I have a fairly good presence. Let me like a whole bunch of people who wouldn't expect me to like their photos and see what happens, right? So I went through and I liked hundreds of photos. Same thing. Nothing happened. So you gotta, I guess, you know, you think, and then the following thing, there was a little bit of results. So I did the same thing. I followed a whole bunch of people. I wanted to see if they would follow me back and blah, blah, blah. And that had a little bit better results. But the problem with that is, if your followers and your following start to equal each other, advertisers aren't taking you seriously. So basically, because then you're in that follow back loop where I have 15,000 followers, but I'm following 19,000 people. So that's not really a legitimate kind of thing. What you want to see is a disparity between what your following looks like and how many people you're following. So mine is something like 15 to 1. And it's not, in the beginning it was a bit intentional. I wanted there to be a disparity because I want to show to advertisers or whomever that it's not that 1-to-1 ratio. You want to see a disparate ratio when it comes to looking at a social media profile as something that's relevant, as valuable. So the following thing, you got to be careful about that, even though you know it works. It's clear that it works. Commenting on people's photos, also, it's a lot of work, but it definitely has benefits, because when people see that you're interested in their work, interested in their following, interested in their posts, they will be more likely to follow you. I mean, I'm sure your experiences are the same. When you see people comment on your things and you look at their profile and you like what you see, you'll follow them. So that's clearly a good way to do it. And I did a whole over-posting thing too, where I posted a whole bunch of pictures in a row, and I noticed people unfollowed. Yeah, they totally unfollow. No matter how much they like your feed, because you're mucking up their feed, right? You're putting all kinds of nonsense in there, and I can't get past this person. My God, my God, my God. I've unfollowed friends, like people I like, because I can't take it. So you have to remember that too. So it's about managing that kind of thing, and it's, you know, that goes back to editing as well, right? So if I'm out at Storm King Arts Center and I'm taking a picture of every sculpture in the whole sculpture park and I'm posting it on Instagram, eventually people are going to get really bored of you. And you have to think about that. You got to think about how that's going to affect all of the things that you can experience in social media.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.